My plan is to keep this as interactive as possible. I'd really like the opportunity to answer questions if you have any, but I'll tell you a little bit about our story and how we got to where we are today. And if things happen along the way that you have questions about, please just ask. I would much prefer that interactive piece than to have me sit up here for 20 minutes and just talk to you. So with that, how many of you represent units of government? Just about everybody. And private sector?
No, higher education.
Higher education, okay. Excellent. Well, then this will be much more relevant because we're going to talk about how the county stepped up and funded a portion, working with the state and how that process goes. A little bit about where we got to today. In 2009, unbeknownst to Rock County, we were awarded an ARRA grant. An ARRA grant was a stimulus project through Woodstock Telephone Company. Woodstock Telephone Company is actually a Pipestone-based provider, telephone provider, in the southwest corner of the state. And what Woodstock had done is they applied for $10 million in stimulus and were awarded that. And they were going to do fiber to the home in Rock County, Pipestone County, and Lyon County, which is Marshall, Pipestone, and Martin, for those that may not be from the southwest corner. So with that, they were all set to go. They flew to Atlanta. We didn't know anything about it. Pipestone County did, Rock County did, Lyon County did. They planned it in a vacuum. They'd gone to Atlanta. They found out that prevailing wage was going to apply to that stimulus, and it raised the price of what they had anticipated their project up to about 22, 23 million. They were going to be 4 million short. Woodstock came back and pulled the three counties together and said, we need $4 million. Now, this is in 2009. We didn't know anything about it. It caught us off guard. Rock County rejected it, Lyon County rejected it, and Pipestone County ultimately rejected it because the other two parties didn't go forward with it either. Looking back, we should have been much more receptive to that. We could have had this whole issue solved for Rock County. But in 2009, it didn't seem to be on the forefront, certainly the way it is today. So that was a lesson learned for both us as government to try to know what the private sector is doing. But I think Woodstock learned a little bit of a lesson through that too, that, hey, you know, if you want these folks to be partners, it's easier to get the partnership on the front end than on the back end. So fast forward to 2013, I've got some new commissioners that I'm working for. One of them decides to move out into the county. He gets out in the county and realizes, hey, there's no internet service out here. He's a home-based business, bought a beautiful home, he checked the water, he checked the sewer, he didn't check the internet. It was a real shock. He comes into the office and says, this isn't acceptable. How can people live like this? Well, they usually research these things, boss. And he said, well, no, we're going to fix it. And that's really the start of our journey, was in 2013. Along with that, at that time, Verizon was making some changes in their plans. They weren't going to do the internet-based stuff as much. So we start then to pursue solutions. We met with, first at an AMC meeting, we drove across town to the Office of Broadband Development and sat down. This is even dates prior to Dana. We met with Diane and with, his name was Bill Coleman at the time. He was a consultant. He did a lot of the mapping. And they said, you guys are in trouble out there. It's hard. There might be an opportunity with grants down the road, but you've got to find your own solution. We get it. They were a great resource. We go back and we meet with Verizon, Lismore Telephone Co-op, CenturyLink, Alliance Communications, and MVTV. We turned every rock over. Who can help us? We're looking for solutions. We're looking for opportunity. Oh, Sioux Valley Energy, we met with them as well because they do a point-to-point. And folks were very receptive. They're like, we could try to help you. MVTV said we could try to bring up some towers and try to bring up some speeds. Lismore Telephone Co-op was a great, and I think Nobles County is going to move forward with Lismore Telephone Co-op. They were looking to do a fiber ring and then have folks build off that fiber ring with towers. So there were some solutions on the table, but they all involved cash from the county. Now, one thing about my bosses is they want the solution, they just didn't want to pay for it. So we were a little bit slow on moving with that. Well, Alliance steps up and says, if you can come up with, and they had the maps from the Woodstock shared the maps, and they said, if you can come up with half of the project, about $7.5, $8 million, we'll build the entire county of Rock. So my boss had some direction for me. He said, let's go find some money. So at that point, then the grant cycle started to come around. We applied for $5 million, and we were successful. So we had 5. That left about, at the time, $7 million still to be accounted for, with Alliance paying that portion. Alliance starts to go forward with the project, and it's a fiber to the home project. It's a complete fiber to the home. There's no copper from the ditch to the house. It's fiber right up to the house with little box. They can deliver gigabyte speed up, gigabyte speed down if need be. Their base plan is 70 megabyte and 30 megabyte. It's a 70-30 base plan. So they're all set to roll, and we find out that they hadn't accounted for in their application Davis Bacon or prevailing wage, Minnesota-based prevailing wage. So now they're about $2 million short, $2.1 million to be exact. They come to the county board, and they said, we're still going to go forward with the project. Rock County is actually a fairly small county with 12 townships. Their solution was, we're not going to serve this portion of the county. We're just going to carve this piece out and not deliver service to the southeast corner of Rock County. The commissioners are like, whoa, that's not going to play very well at home. What other solutions? And they said, well, if you can come up with half of that 2.1 million, we'll kick in another $1 million. So Rock at that point took on the very difficult decision to go ahead and do a tax abatement bond. They weren't sure how that would work. A tax abatement bond, for those of you that haven't used those, require a public hearing. So we set the hearing date. We anticipated people to storm the castle. And for the most part, they did. But they stormed the castle with this message: get it done. We don't care that it's going to cost $1 million. Get it done. And don't leave anybody behind. So with that as their message, they quickly went forward, passed the tax abatement bond for $1 million for the match, and now Alliance will do the entirety of the county. So some of the things that we learned through the process was certainly the prevailing wage was an issue. Plan for it. Know how it's going to impact, where it's going to impact. Now, I understand that there's been some tweaking on that last mile, or the hookup mile is now exempt from prevailing wage. That piece has changed. So that should be accounted for in construction. The other big stumbling block that we didn't see, when you read the legislation that talked about, these are the folks that are eligible, businesses and this and co-ops. But when they talked about co-ops, they were talking about in-state co-ops. Our partner was an out-of-state co-op. So they had to create a in-state business. It's called the Rock County Alliance. So it's a private business, that's a subordinate business to the co-op. So they then became eligible. And then what to do if there's funding shortfalls along the way. There's some construction costs that are certainly overruns. When they got into Rock County, we got the name for a reason. But that's all built in. They're eating any overages and any costs. So they have those as costs themselves. So I would certainly challenge those that are working on those to look at what are going to be your funding mechanisms. How many of you are going to be partners? So in our case, we have the co-op as a partner. The state certainly is a very large partner, and then the county is a partner. Are there other partners or opportunities? You can certainly look at those. Some of the other lessons that as we went forward, it's meet with the townships. When you start digging or trenching in every mile, we're doing 660 miles of fiber, give or take. You're impacting the townships. You're playing in their sandbox, and they want to know what's going on and how it's going to impact them. And are they going to be paid, if you will, for damages, or is it because it's in the public right of way, is it just exempt? They've chosen collectively that they're not going to bill back for any repairs or anything like that. They're going to absorb those. But also meet with your smaller cities if they're going to be covered, because in all of our small communities, other than the city of Laverne, they're boring right to the houses and covering every city. And they needed to know, too, what permits were they going to issue or not issue, because the time got to be so quick on this. From the time we started the project until they're actually putting shovels in the ground was pretty quick. So it's communicate, and make sure these things are discussed on the front end rather than waiting until they become issues on the back end. I will tell you we're about 2/3 through the dig portion right now, and I've had 2 complaints. And I'm just amazed by that. We did some rural water projects where we went like 5 miles and I had 30 complaints. So to kind of put it in contrast, people are starving for this fiber, and they're much more willing to tolerate a couple rocks getting turned up by a trenching machine when they know that the end game is phenomenal service from a great company, a well-respected company. Some things that we didn't take into account that I'm assuming the co-op did is this CAF Phase 2 funding. They put in for some CAF money originally. They applied for a big chunk of money. I think it's $3 million over a period of time. But we couldn't wait for that determination. So they're betting on that money coming in to help defray their costs long term. But that's a risk they were willing to take. Understand that CenturyLink is the big animal in our area. They carved out Rock County because under one of the grant applications, Alliance was allowed to carve out Rock County as like a test county, and because of that, CenturyLink's not coming in to compete because they received big checks from CAF, which was great for us. And you need to work with your local telco or co-op or whatever you're going to work with going forward. Some of the newer issues that are coming up, the city of Laverne, and I'm a resident of the city of Laverne, so I get this more than anything at the grocery store, is how come not us? Laverne service is about a 10.3 to a 10.5, and they hear these 70/30s going to be delivered out in the county. It was a tax abatement bond, meaning that the taxpayers are collectively picking up the tab. How come you left out the city of Laverne? So be prepared to answer those issues if you decide to do a portion of a county and leave out anything. Well, the city of Laverne, the reason it's left out certainly is because they meet the standard and they wouldn't have been eligible for the grant. You can give them the textbook answer. That's what it is. They're not going to like it because they're like, well, we're helping pay for this. How come we can't get the 70/30 service like everyone else, or expandable up to the potentially gigabyte service? So that's kind of where we're at in working with the city residents. I think long range, we're hopeful that Alliance will eventually work their way into the city. But as it stands right now, they're staying on. The other kind of hot button issue we have is the city of Jasper. Very small city, but it's a border system city. So the south half of the city that's in Rock County is getting fiber alone. The north half of the city of Jasper doesn't get anything. And that's created some angst amongst the residents of the city of Jasper. You can see that if you're looking across the street and that guy's light has electricity and you don't. That certainly presents some hard feelings. So those are the types of issues. They may seem small, but they become politically charged, and you need to just be aware of them. Other lessons that I've encouraged is get as many letters as you can on the front end as possible. We had stacks. We basically, I don't want to say we took out an ad, but the newspaper was great to work with. We said, hey, look, we need to know what your issues are. If we had issues, we never dreamt we're out there. The radio station, local radio stations actually not in the city limits, it's on the county. They would get their service shut off when they hit their data cap. So at 2 in the morning, the programming shut off because they couldn't receive their signal in to rebroadcast it. I mean, those are the types of messages that really resonate with commissioners,